Nalin had always been a quiet woman, the kind of person who moved through the world without demanding attention, yet still carried an air of strength wherever she went. People often noticed her before they realized why. Maybe it was the calm in her steps or the thoughtful way she listened to the wind, as if it were speaking directly to her. Maybe it was the pride she carried from her Apache roots, or simply the kindness in her eyes. Whatever it was, Nalin rarely thought about it. She had spent many years simply surviving, and she felt that life had already taken the best years from her. She lived on the edge of the reservation, in a small home made of wood and clay that her family had built many years ago. After her husband passed, the house felt too large for just one person. Every corner held a memory, the pot he had carved, the blanket they had woven together, the places where they once sat during quiet evenings, speaking softly or not at all. Sometimes, she still caught herself turning to say something to him, only to remember he was gone. The memory never hurt sharply anymore, but it left a slow, deep ache that time had never washed away. Life for her was simple now. She woke with the sunrise, tended to her small garden, cared for her horse, an aging mare named Bluebird, and helped the elders of her community. She was respected and trusted, which brought comfort. But she also felt that her life had become predictable. She had no children to care for and no husband to walk beside. Her younger sisters had families of their own. The children she loved were not hers. Sometimes she told herself she was content. But other times she wondered if there was something more meant for her, something she had missed without realizing it. On one warm morning, she packed a few woven baskets and handmade items to take into the nearest frontier town. She didn't go often, but she had promised the women of her community that she would trade their goods for salt, dried fruit, and sewing needles. Bluebird walked slowly but steadily, and the ride into town took nearly half the day. Nalin did not mind. She enjoyed the open sky and the soft sound of wind brushing against her hair. The land was familiar. Every hill and old tree held stories she had heard as a child. By the time she reached the town, the sun was leaning toward the west, and the shops were busy. People from nearby ranches and trading routes filled the street. Nalin tied her mare near the general store and carried her baskets inside. The owner, Mr. Thompson, greeted her with a friendly smile. He had known her for years and always treated her with respect. She traded the goods quickly and stepped outside to enjoy the soft afternoon breeze. That was when she noticed him. Caleb stood near the hitching post across the street, brushing the dust off his vest. He had the look of a man who had lived most of his life outdoors. Tall, broad-shouldered, and sun-tanned, with a gentle expression that softened his rugged features. She had seen him in town before, usually surrounded by cattle ranchers or supply wagons. He was known for working long trail drives and helping small ranches move their herds. He was not loud or boastful like some cowboys. Instead, he carried himself with a calm patience that reminded her of the wide grasslands he rode through. She did not think he noticed her, but he lifted his head and their eyes met for a brief moment. His expression shifted into a warm, honest smile. Nalin gave a small nod in return before looking away. She had no interest in drawing attention. She never had. Still, she felt a faint warmth settle in her chest, a feeling she quickly pushed aside. After gathering the supplies she needed, Nalin spent a little time walking through the market area. She bought a few dried herbs and spoke briefly with a group of women selling beadwork. The town always felt different from the reservation. Louder, busier, full of people who hurried even when there was no reason to. Nalin liked watching them, though. She enjoyed seeing lives so different from her own, even if she didn't feel she belonged to that world. When the sun began to sink lower, she untied Bluebird and prepared for the journey home. The mare was patient but old, and Nalin preferred to travel during the cooler hours of the day. She started down the dusty road that led back toward the open land. A few minutes later, the sound of hooves approached from behind. She guided Bluebird to the side, expecting a group of riders or a wagon to pass. Instead, it was Caleb. He slowed his horse beside her and gave her another gentle smile. "Evening," he said softly. She returned the greeting, keeping her voice polite but reserved. She had spoken to him only once or twice before, exchanging simple words at the trading post. He always seemed respectful, but she did not know him well. "You heading back to your community?" he asked. Nalin nodded. "Before nightfall." "It's a long ride alone," he said. "I'm heading the same direction for a while. If you don't mind, I'll ride with you." She hesitated, not because she feared him, but because she did not want to encourage company she had not asked for. She had grown used to solitude. Still, his tone held no pressure or assumption, only genuine kindness. "You may ride if you wish," she finally said. He thanked her and matched the pace of her mare. They rode quietly at first, letting the rhythm of hooves fill the silence. Nalin kept her eyes on the horizon, where the sky glowed orange and gold. Caleb rode with an easy posture, reins held loosely, his horse stepping with familiar confidence. After a while, he spoke again, his voice light. "I saw your baskets at the store today. They were well made." "They were made by several women," she said, "not just me." "Still," he replied, "they carry a kind of care you don't see in factory goods." She felt a faint smile forming, but kept it to herself. It surprised her how comfortable the silence between them felt. Many men tried to fill quiet moments with unnecessary talk, but Caleb let the soft evening sounds speak for themselves. He seemed at ease with simply being there, which made her feel strangely at ease, too. As they reached a fork in the trail, Caleb slowed his horse. "My road turns west from here," he said, "but I'm glad we rode together." She nodded in return. "Safe travels." He tipped his hat gently, then guided his horse away. Nalin watched him for a moment before continuing her journey. She told herself it was only a polite encounter, nothing more. By the time she reached home, the sky was deep blue and dotted with stars. She settled Bluebird in her small corral, then stepped inside her quiet house. The stillness wrapped around her, familiar yet heavy. She lit a lantern and set her supplies down, but her thoughts drifted back to the ride. She wondered why she kept thinking of the cowboy with the patient smile. It was unusual for someone to remain in her thoughts so long, especially a man she barely knew. She sat beside the window and let the cool night air brush her face. Life had taught her not to expect new beginnings, especially not at her age. She reminded herself that her days of building a family had passed long ago. She had accepted it. She had learned to live with it. And yet, as she closed her eyes, she felt a tiny spark of something she had not felt in many years, a quiet curiosity, a soft stirring of hope she did not dare name. Perhaps it meant nothing, or perhaps it was the first sign that her life was not as settled and finished as she believed. The morning sun rose softly over the wide desert, turning the sand into shades of gold and rose-colored light. Nalin packed the small bundle of supplies she had bought the day before and prepared for her ride home. Bluebird, her old mare, seemed a little tired, but still eager to walk the familiar trails. Nalin touched the horse's muzzle with gentle affection, whispering a quiet thanks for carrying her through so many years. The ride toward her community usually brought her peace. She enjoyed the slow rhythm of the desert, the brush of warm air, the distant call of birds, and the wide open sky that made her feel both small and connected to every living thing. Today, however, her mind drifted more than usual. She kept thinking of the cowboy she had met the day before, Caleb, with his calm smile and patient voice. She told herself there was no reason to think of him. He was simply a polite traveler, nothing more. People crossed paths all the time in frontier towns. Still, Something about his presence lingered in her memory like a soft echo. Maybe it was the way he respected silence. Maybe it was the gentle way he had spoken to her, as if he truly wanted to understand her rather than impress her. She tried to push the thoughts away, telling herself it was foolishness, but they kept drifting back like pieces of sand carried on the wind. By midday, the sun grew stronger. Bluebird slowed her steps, and Nayland could feel the horse's hesitation. She stopped near a group of tall rocks that offered a small patch of shade. When she slid down from the saddle, Bluebird lifted her leg in a way Nayland did not like. After checking carefully, she realized the mare had a slight sprain. It wasn't serious, but it meant they couldn't continue at full pace. Nayland sighed softly and stroked the mare's neck. "We will rest here," she murmured. She set up a small camp under the largest rock, spreading a blanket and letting Bluebird graze on the dry grass nearby. The desert was quiet at this hour. The wind was gentle, the air warm but not unbearable. Nayland sat on the blanket and drank water from her canteen, letting her mind settle. She had always depended on herself. She knew how to handle long journeys, unexpected delays, and the loneliness of the open land. Yet today, a small part of her wished she did not have to travel alone. She shook the thought away, reminding herself that she had chosen this life and grown accustomed to it. A distant sound of hooves broke the quiet. Nayland stood slowly, shading her eyes with her hand as she looked toward the horizon. A rider approached from the west, moving at a steady pace. At first, she thought it might be someone from a ranch or a supply wagon. But as the rider came closer, she recognized the familiar figure. The easy posture, the calm way he held the reins, the dust-covered hat tilted slightly to one side. It was Caleb. Nayland felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, though she kept her face still. She watched as he guided his horse toward her small camp, slowing as he drew near. "Afternoon," he said with a warm smile. "Didn't expect to see you out here." "I stopped to rest," Nayland replied, keeping her voice steady. "My mare's leg needs time." Caleb dismounted and approached slowly, giving Bluebird a friendly pat. "She's a strong horse, just needs a break." Nayland nodded. She appreciated that he didn't fuss or act overly concerned. He simply observed the situation with quiet understanding. "Are you passing through?" she asked. "More or less," he said. "I was headed toward the mesa. Thought I'd check the grazing land for a rancher who asked me for help." He paused, studying her face with gentle eyes. "But I can change my route if you need company." Nayland hesitated. She didn't want to burden anyone. She had lived too many years relying on her own strength to suddenly depend on a stranger, no matter how kind he seemed. "I will be fine," she said politely. Caleb smiled a little. "I don't doubt that. Still, the desert is wide, and resting alone can get dull. Mind if I sit for a while?" She looked at him, surprised by the simple honesty in his tone. He wasn't offering help with pity. He wasn't trying to impress her. He just seemed present. "You may sit," she finally said. He settled down on the blanket, a respectful distance away. They shared a quiet moment, listening to the soft rustle of the wind against the rocks. Caleb removed his hat and wiped the dust from his brow. "It's peaceful out here," he said. "Makes a man feel like the world slows down." "It slows if you let it," Nayland replied. He gave her a thoughtful look. "You speak like someone who listens to the land. It has taught me many things." "I believe it," he said. They talked lightly at first, about the weather, the condition of the trails, the small things travelers notice. Caleb had a gentle humor, the kind that made her smile without realizing it. He spoke of ranch work, of days spent under the sun, of long rides and the satisfaction of simple tasks. He never boasted. When he spoke of challenges, he shared them with humility. Nalin found herself relaxing, her shoulders easing as she listened to him. She rarely trusted people quickly, but Caleb's calm presence made her feel safe, as if he saw the world with the same quiet appreciation she did. After some time, a soft rumble of distant clouds drew Nalin's attention. She looked at the sky. A cluster of gray clouds moved slowly across the horizon, thicker than she had seen earlier. Caleb followed her gaze. "Looks like a storm might be coming," he said. Nalin nodded. Desert storms could rise quickly, bringing strong winds and heavy rain. Though they were not dangerous if one found shelter, they could make travel difficult. She touched Bluebird's side, checking the mare's leg again. "We should wait until the sky clears." "There's a larger rock shelter a short ride east," Caleb said. "I passed it earlier. Good cover if the storm grows stronger." Nalin studied him quietly. He was offering help, but he didn't speak as if she needed him. He spoke as if they could simply walk the trail together. Her mare couldn't travel fast, but the shelter wasn't far. After a moment of thought, she nodded. "We can go there." Caleb helped her gather her things, though he waited for her instruction before touching anything. They walked slowly, allowing Bluebird to move comfortably. The sky darkened little by little, and a cool breeze brushed across their faces. The rock shelter Caleb had mentioned was spacious enough for 2 people and their horses. They stepped inside just as the first drops of rain began tapping against the sand. The air smelled fresh and clean, carrying the sweet scent of wet earth. Caleb built a small fire using dry twigs he kept in his pack. The warm glow filled the space, creating a soft, calming light. Nalin sat near the entrance, watching the rain curtain outside. "This reminds me of evenings during trail drives," Caleb said as he settled down. "We'd find cover under old trees or cliffs, and the men would talk until the fire faded." "Do you miss those days?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but the quiet moments like this, I miss those more." Nalin looked at him, surprised by his answer. Most cowboys she had met loved noise, company, and excitement. Caleb seemed different, gentler, more reflective. "Do you travel alone often?" she asked. "Often enough," he said, "but good company is better." His eyes met hers for a moment, and Nalin felt her breath catch slightly. She looked away, focusing instead on the fire. She told herself to remain calm. Their meeting was coincidence. Their time together was temporary. She didn't want to attach meaning to something that might disappear as soon as the sky cleared, yet she could not deny the warmth growing quietly inside her. When the storm softened to a gentle drizzle, Caleb leaned back against the rock wall, relaxing as if he trusted the moment completely. "You know," he said in a thoughtful voice, "I don't think our meeting yesterday was just chance." Nalin hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes," he said softly, "life brings people together when they least expect it. Not for any reason we can see right away, but maybe to show us something new." Nalin looked into the fire, feeling her heart stir in a way she had tried to ignore for years. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know whether she would see him again after this. But for the first time in a long time, she felt the quiet possibility of something she had long believed impossible. A new beginning, soft, fragile, unexpected, and she wasn't sure whether to fear it or welcome it. The rain had stopped by the time Nalin and Caleb stepped out of the rock shelter. The desert smelled fresh, as if the earth itself had taken a deep breath and washed away its old worries. Drops of water rested on the cactus spines, glistening like tiny crystals. The sky was soft and pale, and the clouds drifted away slowly. Bluebird walked more comfortably after resting, though Nalin still let the mare move at her own slow pace. Caleb rode beside her, keeping just enough distance to show respect, yet close enough to offer quiet company. For a long while, neither of them spoke. But it was not an uncomfortable silence. It felt like the kind of silence shared by two people who understood each other without needing many words. When they reached the place where their paths separated, Caleb slowed his horse and looked at her with a warm expression. "I'm glad the storm led me your way," he said softly. Nalin gave a small nod. "I am glad for your company." Caleb hesitated as if wanting to say more but deciding against it. He tipped his hat with a gentle smile. "If our paths cross again, I'll count myself fortunate." She watched him ride away until he became a small figure in the distance, then disappeared over a ridge. When he was gone, she took a slow breath and continued home, but something inside her felt different, light, yet unsettled, like a leaf carried on a soft breeze. Back on the reservation, life returned to its usual rhythm. Nalin tended to her garden, gathered water from the nearby spring, and helped the elders prepare for an upcoming seasonal ceremony. Her community welcomed her return, and she slipped easily back into her familiar routines. But her thoughts strayed more often than she wished. She found herself remembering Caleb's steady voice, his patient eyes, the way he spoke without rushing, as though each word mattered. She reminded herself again and again that she should not let such thoughts grow. She had her own life, her own responsibilities, and he had his. A week passed before she saw him again. She had gone to the trading post in town to deliver some woven blankets. As she stepped outside, adjusting a bundle under her arm, she heard someone call her name. She turned and saw Caleb walking toward her from across the street. His face brightened when he saw her, and something inside her chest warmed in response. "I was hoping I'd run into you," he said with a friendly grin. She raised an eyebrow slightly. "You were?" "Well," he said with a small laugh, "maybe I've been checking the trading post more often than usual." She felt a shy flutter in her heart, but kept her voice calm. "Have you been working nearby?" "A couple of ranches needed help," he replied, "but I kept thinking I might see you again." His honesty surprised her. Most men danced around their intentions, but Caleb spoke plainly, with no pressure in his tone. Just truth. They walked together down the street, talking about simple things: the weather, the condition of the roads, the herds he had helped move. When he asked about her community, he listened with genuine interest, never interrupting, never assuming. When she described her daily life, he didn't call it quiet or lonely. Instead, he said, "Sounds peaceful. Sounds important." That respect meant more to her than he could know. Over the next few weeks, Caleb found small reasons to visit the reservation, always with permission, always respectful. Sometimes he brought supplies. Sometimes he repaired items for the elders. Sometimes he simply walked with Nalin along the riverbank, listening as she spoke about her culture or the stories passed down by her ancestors. Nalin grew used to seeing him. Too used, she feared. She felt a gentle happiness bloom inside her whenever he visited. Yet at the same time, an old worry began to rise. It sat quietly in her heart at first, then grew heavier each day. She tried to ignore it, but it stayed. One evening, as the sky glowed with shades of orange, Caleb came to see her. He brought a repaired saddle strap she had asked him to fix, handing it to her with a proud smile. "Strong as new," he said. "Thank you," she replied softly. "You are skilled with your hands." "It helps when the work is for someone who matters," he said lightly. The words made her heart skip. She felt warmth rise in her chest, but she also felt the familiar ache she tried so hard to forget. She turned away, pretending to adjust the strap. "Walk with me?" Caleb asked gently. She agreed, though part of her wished she had said no, not because she didn't want his company, but because her heart was growing too full, too quickly. They walked along the quiet path near her home. The air was cool, the soft sound of crickets rising from the grass. Caleb seemed unusually thoughtful, as if he carried something he wanted to say but wasn't sure how. Finally, he spoke. "Naylin, I enjoy spending time with you." Her breath caught. She kept walking, unsure of what to say. "I admire you," he continued. "Your strength, your calm spirit, the way you care for your people. I've met many folks in my life, but none quite like you." "Caleb." She tried to keep her voice steady. "You should not say such things." "Why not?" "Because—" She swallowed hard. "Because I cannot give you the future you may want." He frowned slightly, confused. "I'm not asking for anything." "But you should know," she said quietly, staring at the path. "I cannot have children. Not now. Not ever." The words came out sharper than she intended, as if she wanted to push him away before he pushed her first. She expected him to look surprised, maybe disappointed. Most men would. She waited for his expression to fall, for a polite distance to form between them. But Caleb simply nodded, taking a long, thoughtful breath. "All right," he said softly. She looked up, startled. "All right?" "Yes," he replied. "Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me." His calm response confused her. "You do not understand. I am older. My time for such things has passed. I cannot give a family. I cannot give what most men want." Caleb stopped walking and turned to face her fully. His eyes held no confusion, no sadness, just sincerity. "Naylin," he said gently, "you are not a gift to be measured by what you can or cannot give. You are a whole person. And I care about you for who you are, not for children you think you must give me." She looked away, uncertain how to respond. "You say this now, and I will say it tomorrow," he said firmly. Naylin's heart trembled. She wanted to believe him, but doubt clung to her like a heavy blanket. "Caleb, I have lived long enough to know that people's hearts change," she whispered. He stepped closer, though not too close. "Then let me show you that mine won't." His words sank deep into her heart, stirring something old and tender and fearful. For years, she had told herself that love was a chapter of her life that had ended. She had told herself she was too old for new beginnings, too far along her path to start another journey with someone new. But here was Caleb, patient and steady, offering her something she had long believed lost: gentle companionship, understanding, and the possibility of a future shaped by choice, not expectation. She didn't answer him right away. Her voice refused to form the words her heart longed to say. So she simply nodded, looking down at her hands. Caleb saw her hesitation, but did not push her. "We'll go at your pace," he said softly. And for the first time in many years, Naylin felt hope rise, quiet, trembling, but alive. The weeks that followed moved gently, like a slow river carrying both worry and hope. Naylin found herself thinking about Caleb more often than she admitted, and every time she saw him ride toward her community, her heart lifted and tightened at the same time. She welcomed his company, yet she feared the closeness growing between them. She wanted to enjoy the moments, but a quiet voice inside her kept warning her not to let her heart open too far. Caleb never rushed her. He visited with respect, always asking permission before stepping onto the reservation. The elders noticed him early on, watching him with careful eyes. Outsiders were not always kind, and the community protected its own. But Caleb behaved with such gentleness and patience that even the cautious elders began to nod at him with warm approval. When he walked through the settlement, he let the children show him their beadwork or point out small carvings. He spoke kindly to everyone, never raising his voice, never acting like he belonged more than he was invited. He carried himself like a man who understood that trust was earned slowly, and he was willing to wait. One afternoon, he helped one of the older men mend a broken wagon wheel. The elder, a man named Dakota, watched him work with steady eyes. "You work with care," Dakota said. "It's the only way I know how," Caleb replied, giving a small smile. "Care makes things last," Dakota said simply. "People too." Caleb nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. Nalin heard about that conversation later. It warmed her heart and frightened her at the same time. Her people were beginning to accept him. They saw something in him, something steady, something true. And Nalin knew this meant her life was changing in ways she had never imagined. One cool evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft gold, Caleb came to see her again. He found her near the river, gathering smooth stones to decorate the garden behind her home. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. "Evening," he said softly. "Evening," she replied. He helped her pick up the stones, placing them carefully in a small basket. For a while, they worked side by side in friendly silence. When the basket was full, they walked back toward her home. Caleb paused near the entrance of the garden, looking at the small plants she tended so lovingly. "Your garden always feels peaceful," he said, "like a place that welcomes anyone who steps inside." "It is a place of memory," Nalin said, "and a place of healing." "Both suit you," he said gently. Her heart trembled at his words. She looked away, not wanting him to see how deeply they touched her. They sat on a wooden bench she had built years earlier. The air was cool, the sky glowing softly as the first stars appeared. Caleb seemed thoughtful, as if he carried a question he wasn't sure he should ask. "Nalin," he said after a long pause, "may I speak something that's been on my mind?" "You may speak," she said quietly. He took a slow breath. "I know you've lived through loss. I know you've carried heavy things alone for a long time. And I don't want to bring confusion into your life. I just want you to know I care about you. Deeply." Her breath caught. She had known this moment might come, but she still felt unprepared. "Caleb," she said softly, "I have told you. I cannot give the things most men want. I am older now. I cannot have children. My life is already shaped. It may not match the life you dream of." "Nalin," he answered, shaking his head gently. "You think my heart is looking for something you should provide, but it's not. It's looking for someone to share days with, someone whose spirit feels right beside mine." "You say that now," she whispered. "And I mean it now," he replied. "And tomorrow, and the day after that." She looked down at her hands resting in her lap. "I fear giving you hope that may not last." Caleb leaned slightly forward, not touching her, but offering presence. "Then let me tell you a truth that will last. I don't want a child to complete my life. I want you." The words made her eyes sting with emotion she tried to hide. She didn't know how to answer. She didn't know if she should believe him or guard her heart. "Caleb," she murmured, "love at my age is not like love when we are young. It comes with fear, with memories, with roots already grown deep." He smiled softly. "Then let me grow beside your roots, not replace them." The simplicity of his words broke something inside her, something she had built to protect herself. She had believed no one could want her now, not truly, not fully. She had believed her time for love had ended long ago. Caleb reached out very gently, waiting for her permission. When she gave a small nod, he took her hand, holding it with such care that it felt like a promise. "I don't want a future that looks any certain way," he said. "I want a future that has you in it, however that looks, however that feels. Let me walk with you. That's all." Her heart softened, the fear in her chest loosening as if slowly untying. She squeezed his hand gently but did not speak. She didn't need to. Her silence carried meaning, and Caleb understood it. In the days that followed, he visited more often, not to push her, but to be present. They walked along the river, shared meals with the elders, and talked about their pasts, not the painful parts, just the simple moments that shaped them. Nalin showed him the traditional plants used for healing. Caleb showed her how to tell weather changes by the feel of the air. The community watched them with quiet approval. Some of the elders smiled knowingly. The children laughed whenever Caleb tried to speak Apache words and said them a little wrong. The young women teased Nalin gently, not to embarrass her, but because they were happy to see her smile again. One evening, Dakota invited Caleb to stay for a small gathering. They sat around a warm fire, listening to stories and singing soft songs passed down through generations. Caleb listened with deep respect, his expression soft and thoughtful. When one of the elders offered him a piece of woven cloth as a symbol of welcome, he accepted with genuine gratitude. Nalin watched from across the circle, feeling her heart swell. Seeing Caleb among her people, sitting with humility and quiet joy, made her realize something she had been trying to deny. He wasn't trying to change her life. He was trying to join it. He wasn't trying to take her away from her roots. He was trying to understand them. Later, as they walked toward her home under the moonlit sky, Caleb spoke softly. "They are very kind," he said. "They see goodness in you," Nalin answered. "And you?" he asked gently. "What do you see in me?" She turned her head toward him. The moonlight softened his features, making him look both strong and gentle at once. "I see a heart that listens," she said. "And that is rare." Caleb smiled, a warm smile that reached his eyes. "I hope you know. I want to walk with you. Not ahead of you, not behind you. With you." Nalin stopped walking. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a calm settle over her like a soft blanket. "Then walk with me," she whispered. He took her hand again, this time more confidently, but still with care. In that quiet night, under the silver glow of the moon, Nalin realized that love didn't end with age. Love simply waited for the right moment to return, gentle and steady, like a dawn that rises slowly and warms the earth in its own time. And she welcomed it, not with fear, but with hope. Nalin woke before sunrise on the morning of her wedding day. The sky outside her small home was still dark, but a soft silver light touched the horizon. She sat quietly on her blanket for a few moments, listening to the stillness around her. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. She placed her hand over her heart, feeling it beat with a rhythm she had not felt in many years, hope mixed with nervous excitement. She never imagined she would stand beside someone again. She never imagined someone would look at her with such steady kindness, or that she could return that warmth without fear. Yet here she was, preparing for a new beginning with Caleb, a man who had walked into her life so unexpectedly, but stayed with a patience that felt like a steady river. Her aunt arrived just as the first rays of light touched the ground. She carried a bundle of simple wedding garments, soft, traditional clothes in warm earth colors. The older woman smiled as she placed the clothing beside Nalin. "You look lighter today," her aunt said gently. "Like a weight has fallen from your shoulders." Nalin smiled back, a trembling but genuine smile. "Maybe it has." Her aunt helped her dress and braid her hair. As she worked, she hummed an old melody, one Nalin's mother used to sing. It wrapped around her like a familiar blanket, bringing comfort she had not known she needed. When the braid was finished, her aunt placed a small string of beads at the end. They were simple, worn smooth with age but full of meaning. They had belonged to Nalin's mother. "You carry her with you today," her aunt whispered. Nalin closed her eyes, touched by the gesture. She felt a quiet strength settle inside her. Outside, people from the community began to gather, preparing the small space where the ceremony would take place. It was set near the edge of the open plain, under a lone pine tree that had stood there longer than anyone could remember. Its branches stretched wide like welcoming arms. Caleb arrived shortly after. He wore clean, sturdy clothes, nothing fancy, just a crisp shirt and a vest his friend had sewn for him. His blonde hair had been combed neatly, though a few strands had already fallen loose in the breeze. When he caught sight of Nalan, he froze for a moment, as if words had left him. "You look—" He paused, searching for something honest, something real. "You look like someone the sun is proud to rise for." Nalan laughed softly, touched by the sincerity in his voice. She stepped toward him, and he straightened his vest nervously, causing a few people around them to smile. The ceremony was small, exactly what both wanted. Nothing loud, nothing showy. Just people who cared for them and a calm space that felt sacred in its simplicity. A respected elder from Nalan's community led the blessings. He spoke slowly, allowing each word to settle into the air like soft dust. He blessed their union with wishes for patience, understanding, and strong hearts that listen before they speak. Caleb listened carefully, holding Nalan's hands gently in his. His thumbs brushed over her knuckles in a steady, reassuring motion. When the elder spoke about choosing companionship as equals, Caleb's eyes softened even more, as if those words were meant just for them. There were no rings, but Caleb had brought a small woven bracelet, something he had made himself. The weaving was not perfect, a few strands uneven, but Nalan saw the effort in each knot. Caleb tied it around her wrist slowly, his fingers slightly shaking. Then Nalan returned the gesture with a bracelet made of leather and beads. When their hands joined again afterward, they felt like a pair that had always belonged together. When the ceremony ended, there was a gentle cheer from the people around them. Simple food was shared: bread, roasted vegetables, berries collected earlier that morning. Laughter rose into the air like soft music. Children ran around the pine tree, playing games, their voices full of joy. Nalan and Caleb sat together on a blanket, letting their shoulders touch. It felt natural, comfortable, like two pieces fitting into place after being apart for too long. Caleb looked at her with a thoughtful smile. "I want to learn everything," he said quietly. "Your ways, your stories, your people's traditions. I want to do things right." "You already are," Nalan replied. "You came with an open heart. That matters more than anything." He nodded, his expression earnest. "I want you to know, I don't expect you to be someone you're not. I'm here because of who you are." His words warmed something deep in her chest. For so long she had felt the pressure of what she believed she lacked, especially her inability to have children. But Caleb had shown her again and again that his love did not rest on expectations. It rested on understanding and on a steady companionship that reminded her of the slow, reliable rhythm of the earth. A few days after the wedding, they began building their shared life. Caleb moved into her home, though he insisted on keeping much of her space as it was. Together they made small changes, adding shelves, repairing the roof, planting a small garden beside the house. It became a place that felt like a blend of both worlds, filled with small signs of each of their histories. Nalan found herself waking earlier each morning, eager to start the day alongside him. They worked side by side, gathering water, caring for the garden, helping neighbors when needed. Caleb learned quickly, always asking questions with respect, always willing to listen. Children from the community visited often. Some came for stories, some for help with chores, some simply because they liked being near Caleb, who had a way of making even simple tasks feel like an adventure. Nalan watched him with the children sometimes, how patient he was, how gentle his voice became. It surprised her how naturally he stepped into a guiding role. One afternoon, as they sat with a small group of children weaving simple crafts, Nalin realized something quietly profound. She felt like a mother again, not in the old sense of carrying a child, but in the deeper sense of nurturing, guiding, and opening her heart. The children came to her with trust, and she offered them soft wisdom, stories, and warm encouragement. It filled her days with a purpose she had forgotten she could hold. Later, when the children ran off to play, Caleb turned to her with a soft smile. "You know," he said, "they love being around you. They listen to your stories like they're treasures." Nalin felt a warm flush on her cheeks. "They bring life to the house," she said. "They remind me that family is made from many things." Caleb nodded gently. "That's what I believe too." As the months passed, their home became a place people visited often. Travelers stopped by for water and left with smiles. Relatives and neighbors came to share meals. Teens came for advice. The home felt alive, filled with footsteps and voices that created a kind of family formed through simple, everyday kindness. And through it all, Nalin felt herself grow into this new chapter with a sense of peace she once thought impossible. She no longer worried about what she could not give. She focused instead on what she could create, a life of warmth, honesty, and shared responsibility. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Nalin and Caleb sat outside on the small bench they had built together. The sky was painted with soft colors, rose, gold, and hints of lavender. The air was still. Caleb wrapped his arm gently around her shoulders. She leaned into him without hesitation. "You thinking about something?" he asked softly. Nalin looked out at the open land stretching in front of them, the familiar sight now carrying a different meaning. "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that I never understood how beautiful choice could be. I thought family was something that happened only one way, but now I see it can be something you build, step by step, act by act." Caleb smiled, his eyes warm. "We're building it together," he said. She nodded. Yes, together. In that quiet moment, Nalin felt something settle in her heart, a gentle truth. Her life had not ended when she faced loss. It had changed, reshaped, and found a new path, a path that led her to a man who held her with steady courage, to a community that embraced her, and to a home filled with love that grew from choice rather than expectation. And as the first stars appeared in the sky, Nalin rested her head on Caleb's shoulder, knowing that the story of their lives was only beginning. Patient, steady, and full of the kind of love that lasts not because of chance, but because of two hearts choosing each other every day.